Recently, Alaska Guide Creations had a 20% off discount on all of their products for Silvercore Club members. For those of you that didn't jump on this amazing discount, keep your eyes peeled on our social media as we will be giving away an Alaska Guide Creations Bino Pack system very similar to what I use and I'm holding up here. For Silvercore Club members that haven't tuned into the Outpost yet, that's the private members podcast, exclusive only for Silvercore Club members. Go into your club dashboard, get your private link, and start listening today. It comes out every Monday. Here's a review from Silvercore Club member Dale. The Outpost has quickly become one of my favorite new podcasts. The shorter format fits perfectly into my mornings, and each episode centers on a single theme, explored with just the right amount of detail. I especially appreciate the practical takeaways, simple actions, or reflections I can carry into my day or week. Travis brings a thoughtful mix of outdoor expertise and life expertise, and he has somehow found a great balance of depth and brevity. I highly recommend it. Thanks, Dale. Now, without further ado, let's get into this episode. I'm joined today by a combat veteran with specialized training in information warfare and psychological operations. He holds a master's in culture and in negotiation. He's built a career as a Crown prosecutor and litigator and now works directly with CEOs as a strategy coach. He's an entrepreneur, a self-described recovering lawyer, and a force of nature in the courtroom and boardroom alike. And he's been known for taking on problems that most wouldn't even dream of touching. Welcome to the Silvercore podcast, Phillip Millar.
Thank you, sir. It was a great intro. I'm gonna borrow that for my own bio or somewhere else.
You can throw it up on the website there. So we're talking a little bit off air, and I have done work as a subject matter expert for the courts, both Crown and for Defense Counsel, on weapons-related and use of force-related matters. And consequently, I get people calling up or emailing or messaging me saying, "Hey, I'm looking for a really good firearms lawyer, or I'm looking for a really good self-defense lawyer, or I'm looking for whatever it might be." And my advice from my experience has always been the same. Don't look for a good firearms lawyer, somebody who knows gun stuff inside and out. Look for somebody who's got the procedural law figured out, who can tell this story, who can work a jury, who can work a judge, somebody who's got some chops in that area, because they can learn the other parts. And my experience has been that the firearm-centric lawyers can get bogged down in the minutia, and they might win that particular minute fight, but lose the overall war. You have a gift for storytelling, and from what I've been doing in my research, are a big picture looker when it comes to dealing in law, as well as for consulting for businesses. Let's see if we can dissect that a little bit.
Yeah, like I'm a kind of a lawyer by accident, so I don't really enjoy the profession, but I went into there after I had to leave the military on a medical issue because I lost my eyesight in one eye. And what I found is that lawyers think that they are smart, but they're not necessarily compelling. And they don't think they have to care about human behavior, human nature, stories. They just think that their IQ and their LSAT score and their ability to quote cases is all that's needed. And as he says, that's an astute point. I haven't heard anybody from your side ever be that perceptive about it, because the people who get into the most minutia about a topic are amazing. I hire those lawyers as consultants if I need them, right? Because if you look at the British model, it's interesting. In the British legal system, the barristers, which are the trial lawyers, they don't see the file until almost the day it goes into court. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Because they all go to court and then they get handed slips that are going to trial, and they take it to trial because they know how to perform on the stage or the theater of a courtroom. But there's so many layers to the legal world, and the system has gone so. We can talk later about how juries have changed because of COVID. COVID has represented a change in society that most people in all of these industries haven't accommodated for, and it's a struggle. Like, our society has fundamentally changed the last 5 to 10 years, It's rewritten the rules, and the people who were experts before aren't getting the success they needed. So you need range in order to solve important problems, and
Mm.
that's where reading outside of your area of expertise, having education in different areas, having traveled the world, it gives you an ability to dissect a problem from a better level than just focusing on a tiny point that doesn't really matter.
Well, let's start at the first point. How'd you lose eyesight in one of your eyes?
I was just on a deployment overseas in Africa. I went and lost my eyesight. They sent me to law school,
Mm.
and so lawyer by accident, uh, doing interesting things. I thought it would be. I went into the prosecutor's office because I thought it'd be a white hat kind of role that I felt I had as combat officer,
Mm-hmm.
specialized units, and then I found I was putting a lot of innocent people in jail because their lawyers fucking sucked.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the hard things about being a lawyer is not letting the client dictate everything too. But the lawyers, if you have money, they'll let you pay them as long as you want. You see this in divorce all the time, which a lot of our brothers and some of our sisters suffer from, like grievance kind of issues that don't really need legal solutions. But lawyers are happy to take your money and say how unfair the world is.
Mm.
I've had this with vaccines. I've had people offer me $100,000 to fight some issues in the legal system that I just know they can't win based on the premise that they're articulating, even though I think they may be right.
Sure.
And it's hard because nobody knows what lawyers actually do behind closed doors with their billing, their docketing. There's just so many who will grin fuck you.
Mm-hmm.
But, they'll smile, pump up what your grievances are, and take your money. And in the end, when they lose, just say I'm sorry. That's why I've always respected how pilots deal with errors versus surgeons and lawyers. If pilots screw up, they die.
Right.
Right? Lawyers and doctors, if they screw up, say sorry, sue me.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. I've got insurance.
yeah, so it's a different approach to learning and to being better at your job.
Well, so a number of things unpack there, but I'm just going to jump to the next one, which kind of, because I know I'm going to come back to a few of them. AI. When I look at modern AI and how that's being implemented, is that going to make many parts of the lawyer's job sort of redundant? Because aside from maybe the storytelling, but a lot of the work that a lawyer does, AI seems to be able to do, maybe with some
No, no.
incorrect information.
This is getting into some good higher order thinking. Is professions can provide a service to society, but then what they do is they close their ranks and do everything to preserve the profession's ability to make money.
Mm.
So in medicine, we should be able to telemedicine, 5 minutes, upload our medical records, have AI do a diagnosis thing, and we could improve medicine by 1,000%. But the unions and the associations want to protect the billing mechanism. The same thing happens in law. Like any human could probably get an amazing contract 99 times out of 100 with AI if it's done properly. But we put in all of these procedural things. Like it's still hard for me to go to a new courtroom and figure out what the fuck to do. Like, so we just complicate and complicate and complicate, and it makes people have to use these professionals, and it's not actually solving the problem. So, I think the one area that will survive is the trial lawyer, because they have to go into the arena, the coliseum of ideas, and fight the battle. But I tell young lawyers all the time, you're overly cocky. Yeah, you got a good score, you got a law degree, but you can't keep billing $500 an hour for when AI can give you a 90% solution to it. I think plumbers and electricians are going to be making lawyers' wages in 2 years, and lawyers are going to be making their wages because they're not innovating.
You see, I see a future where AI can be the arbiter of truth as well, and people just have to agree on facts and use a lawyer ahead of time to agree on the standard that it's going to be measured by and the facts that get input. And then you say, okay, here you go, and throw it into the AI judge, essentially.
People don't want to acknowledge it, but there are tests that they won't show you where AI today is twice as effective at diagnosing elements than a doctor. Right? And so even from figuring out fact from fiction, jurors and judges have biases, bad days. Like, you don't get justice in these systems. You just get the best results you can on the day.
I've long since learned we don't have a justice system. We have a judicial system, but we don't have a justice system. and I've watched people go in and lie through their teeth, but cry on the stand.
Oh God.
And the justice, the judge is sitting up there, and this sort of Lancelot want a savior effect kind of kicks in, and the lies get overlooked.
Oh my
I
God.
don't. Yeah.
Sorry, the most business, like it's almost too much, but it's, like I used to prosecute rapists. Like I like taking down bastards,
Good.
right? It gave me joy after the military, but I also saw that a lot of men's lives are being absolutely destroyed because of a system that the pendulum has swung so far forward that if you shed tears, there's this believe all victims before a trial, and there's no recourse. I've had so many cases on it. It's just it's heartbreaking not to be able to have society recognize how many men's lives are being destroyed. Like in university, in third year, the police come by and say somebody said in first year they were too drunk. Like it's not a rape, it's two drunk people, and then somebody is redefining what consent is, and then the person's kicked out of school, has to pay $100,000 if they have any hopes of winning, and they don't get it back. And it's very hard to hold the liar accountable. Because what I think this is interesting. Men predominantly use physical force for violence. That's just part of evolution. Women, Jordan Peterson has said this, women use words for violence. We now live in a society where words can create violence against men. All you have to do is manufacture an allegation, right? Which is much easier than getting away with hitting somebody in many cases, right? So because there's bad women and bad men, bad women who want to get a $200,000 tax-free payout can just use words to get it. And society won't acknowledge. You go up in a courtroom and you say you're lying for money, and they're like, "Oh my God, how dare you say, this gender would lie for money?" I'm like, "I dare." It happens all the time. Like people will cheat on their taxes. They'll lie for $200,000 tax free. But it's an uphill battle to clear names.
Well, so you go in, you're wearing the white hat, so you think. You're working as Queen's Counsel, now King's Counsel. And at some point, you started to question that. Was there a tipping point, or was this a gradual thing?
There was a tipping point, and combined with the fact that because I was good getting kids, like when you prosecute a rapist, a child rapist especially, the kids have to get on the stand and testify, right? And memory is crazy, but essentially the kid has to relive what happened.
Yeah.
And so I was prosecuting, and because I was good with kids, most lawyers aren't good with other humans, right? They don't play well in the sandbox. They're not empathetic. So I just got all of the kids' rape cases. And then the thing that made me switch to private practice is just doing a prosecution where the 3 victims were all the same age of my daughters. And hearing about, I just was like, I got to get out of this. I got the conviction, but I went out and I started representing victims of sexual assault. It's amazing how many men are victims of sexual assault. And this is probably a good podcast to talk about it a little bit, because everybody is like 1 in 3 women, but men don't come forward. The number is 1 in 5 to 1 in 6 men have been abused, especially people who live in rural areas, isolated areas. They can't talk about it. They end up medicating with alcohol, drugs. Some of them end up abusing other people because they never had therapy or they don't feel comfortable talking about it.
Isn't that the common case, that the abusers often within a few years will become, or the abused will become the abuser?
Even child abusers.
Right.
Almost all of them were abused as a kid. And there's this weird stuff that goes on. We don't understand the mind, but men's first orgasm will often affect their sexuality as they grow up, especially if they're young. So if they're abused by an uncle, a young boy is abused by the uncle, it can change them. And a and then they can seek to get back to that innocence of being the kid they were, and it kind of attracts them to kids. It's a very weird, bad, but because we don't offer a safe way for people to talk about what happened, men struggle, and the good men just drink, to hide it. So if for anybody in your audience, if you're abused, like there is no shame. It's happened I was abused when I was in grade 6 by a man at a bus stop. Like, guy died before trial of leukemia, but you got to be able to kind of talk about it and create a community where we don't all have to thump our chests and pretend we're invincible. But it's a difficult area to get into. So I ended up starting representing victims of sexual abuse and holding their rapists accountable in civil law. And
Mm.
then I just gravitated towards helping people who are wrongfully accused also. But there's those, I like, coming from the military, I like challenges that, most people won't take on. It's not the most profitable, but
Yeah, but it fuels you. I mean, so you look at your childhood and your upbringing and what happened there is that, like, you're a fighter. That's what you do. You got into the Canadian Armed Forces because you choose you want to fight. You want to protect those who can't protect themselves. As a lawyer, you're a fighter. It's a different arena, but you're doing it. Do you ever get tired of the fight?
no, that's why I'm moving more into the coaching of businesses,
Mm.
with my partner, because honestly, the system will wear you down. Like, and I've had decades of fighting, and I find I would rather be on a patrol overseas or jumping into a hot LZ than
Mm.
going into a justice system that doesn't care about the truth, and where bureaucrats are just moving product. They got their political bias, and it's heartbreaking to lose a jury trial where you really believe the person's innocent. And I just had a case where, thankfully I won it, but retired service member divorced his OPP senior police officer wife,
Mm.
and when he was successful in the family court, 2 weeks later, she went to her department, and Buddy got charged with attempted murder, assault, all of this stuff from 20 years ago, 10
Mm.
and 20 years ago, and he gets arrested in a massive takedown. Just destroyed his life, and we had to do a 3-week jury trial. And I can tell you at the beginning, the judge wasn't happy with me attacking a female, but by the end, female judge was like, "This woman's lying." But
Well, that's a pretty tough hurdle to jump over, and to get other people to jump over with you.
especially a police officer who knows how to take the stand and give
Mm-hmm.
evidence. Like, if ever there's a danger, is if that person makes a wrongful allegation.
So you said earlier, we don't understand the mind,
Yeah.
but you've got a little bit of insight. Like
Mhm.
we're talking about information warfare, psychological operations. That plays a little bit into a person's psyche, into
Yeah.
mind. I don't truly understand the ins and outs of information warfare and psychological operations. Can you break that down for me?
Well, there's some there's a lot of deep stuff in there, but I love studying behavior, human psychology, human behavior. You probably listen to the behavior panel and that stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just like how to convey a message. Like, I think the essence of some of that information warfare is, as Sun Tzu said, to win the war, without firing a shot, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
prep the battlefield. Like, I can tell you, when I go on some cases, I may be revealing some of my secrets, but with arrogant opposing counsel, I'll raise issues and make it look like they're really important.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll get into fake arguments where I look like I'm losing my shit, and I have no intention of arguing them,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, because I've insulted them, they overreact. They produce like 100 pages of stuff that I'm not even going to do, but I know what so you pick your best course of action, you look
Mm-hmm.
at what your second best course of action is, and then you look at what are indicators to my opponent that I've taken this course of action. And then you start dropping out intel, black, gray, and white sources, to make it look like this is true in business, this is true in anything,
Sure.
that make
Sure.
it look like, if you're in business, you make your competitor think you're going with this course of action, and you start dropping stories on Instagram or LinkedIn, so you make them plan against your false plan. That's called deception planning. That's very
Mm.
cool. And then you identify what are the things that would reveal to your opponent that you're doing your preferred course of action, and then you really protect from showing those things. It gets
It's like an elaborate game of rock, paper, scissors.
yeah, I'll tell you like an interesting way I took on a good case where this guy was a good guy, a little misguided from his friends, but was worth a heck of a lot of money, and was defrauded by a well-known financial company that I can't name, about 800 about I'd say about 30 million bucks. And he
Mm.
had paid $800,000 in legal fees to one of the big names and had gotten nothing. Came to me in the a last ditch effort. I flew out to Alberta.
Mm.
And what I realized is the nature of the financial institution, I was able to identify where the vulnerable points were. And it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't fighting them where they had unlimited legals. Okay, now I'll just switch to a hypothetical in case anybody is.
Sure.
So I identified where the vulnerable point was, and it was the spouses of the board of directors. So By some way, the spouses started getting emails from people who sounded like they were investigating RICO claims, right? And when you're in a financial institution that may have issues with clean versus dirty money, you know, these kind of inquiries to the spouses, and in this particular culture, spouses are very influential in protecting, right? Within 2 weeks, that thing settled.
Funny how that works, eh?
Right? Like but that's the type of thinking that's not really out there. But you know, these people were criminals, so
you change the conversation into something that maybe they're just not comfortable having in the moment.
Yeah, but that's what you have to do when you're doing like second or third order thinking, is find out where the leverage points are in the information world and go there. But most lawyers are just happy to keep billing. And they just keep billing, and they're doing what they're supposed to do. They're not being crooked or criminal. They're just staying on the legal path, and people just hope that it'll work out for them, but it's not the best way often.
Well, they don't care, right? What they care about is the money at the end of the day, and most don't have that vested interest in caring about the client. Some do, but many just aren't as creative. They're not entrepreneur-minded or out-of-the-box sort of thinking.
It's not a creative industry. Like there's nothing on the LSAT about being creative, or even like the way to get into law school. There's really nothing about being able to storytell or being able to understand human behavior or have empathy or identify deception, or because nobody says what they're really thinking. They say what they think society wants them to say.
That's right.
Right. We call that social desirability bias, and that's why so many polls are. I saw in garbage Canadian newspaper today, majority of Canadians polled would volunteer for a war if there was one. I'm like, yeah, sure they would. When they're asked on a phone call, like, what are they going to say?
Right.
No, I'm a coward. Like,
yeah, exactly.
But it becomes like a front page story in the national news. Like, our society have become toddlers. And nobody is thinking.
Well, I see a bit of a switch. I mean, when you talk about COVID being an instigator for societal change, and 100% I agree with that. And you took on a number of COVID cases and worked in that area where other people were too afraid. In a time when people even raising their voices to question it were being heavily sanctioned. But I also see a bit of a swing of the pendulum coming back. Not fast enough as I'd like, but I do see a little bit of that swing coming back where people can talk about things a little bit differently. And it isn't such a touchy-feely area that we were in before. Are you seeing that, or is that just from my perspective?
No, it's definitely happening. More in the U.S. than in Canada. You know, Canada, I think we just missed a good opportunity to kind of jump on that train a little bit. In the private industry, yes. That's why, like, I only want to work with founders in the business when I'm doing business coaches, because public companies, because they're governed by shareholders and ESG ratings, they are just a cesspool of ineffective, useless tools who are virtue signaling, and you can't get anything done. And if you say anything, you can be canceled. So in these corporations, they're still living in their own world where they can't say what's really happening. But with founders, like that's why I really resonate with, I find entrepreneurs are like military special forces people. They actually put everything on the table. They actually put the hours in. They're not phoning in a 9 to 5. They believe in something. Their team has to be aligned. They have to build people up. Founders are amazing to work with. But all we see in the news are big corporations. And so everybody is copying these big corporations like Lululemon, showing their running ambassador to be an obese woman. That's your running ambassador. Like, how has our society gotten to the point where that makes sense and the company can still be in business?
I think they're having some issues. From what I understand, I didn't see the obese woman ambassador, but that doesn't make sense.
But I'll tell you, like an example. Camille, my partner in that business and my life partner, she went on a very well-known podcast out of LA called Skinny Confidential, and she was like, should I talk about Lululemon running ambassador? You should look it up on your computer and show the picture. Like, there are so many women who are amazing examples of running ambassadors. And Lululemon's was literally not chunky, not big bone, but obese.
Sure.
Right? And then it's like, one of my purest joys is running ultra marathons. And so, like, hello. So Camille calls that out on this podcast, and it just goes purely viral. And everybody, there are the trolls attacking it, but almost 9 to 1 they were going. So it echoes your point that people are fed up with it. because on this kind
Mm.
of liberal LA podcast, people are like, yeah, what the F is going on here? So I
Yeah,
think,
it's
I'm
ridiculous.
encouraging people to say things that aren't mean spirited or wrong, but things that need to be said in order to take back the podium.
Mm. So you're talking about special forces and it being kind of like a special forces operation, and I notice over your shoulder, I think you called it a kukri. I generally call it a kukri.
Yeah.
Um, the Gurkhas are known for that knife in the back.
Yeah.
Uh, how'd you get that one?
I was overseas in Bosnia at a divisional headquarters, and they had a Gurkha battalion that was responsible for the security. I
Mm,
don't know if any of the Yanks or Canadian servicemen or women have ever served with them. The Brits are good, but I was an officer. But we kind of call them Ruperts sometimes, like they're a little bit
sure.
very polite. But the Gurkhas are hardcore, and I was a Canadian who had gotten my hands dirty in the infantry, so I became friends with them, and they would invite me into their mess, and we would hang out, and I would secretly help them when they get screwed over. So they gave me the kukri, which is their famous knife for slitting throats, cutting off heads, and just said they hadn't really seen a Canadian before that. So that's one of my precious gifts.
Yeah, that's going to have some value for sure.
Hmm.
When you first came onto my radar, I was seeing there's a clip that went around the firearms community, and you were talking about judicious use of force, essentially, and the
Hmm.
misconception of if they pull a knife, you got to pull a knife. They throw a punch, you pull a punch. And you took the more Malone approach. If they pull a knife, you pull a gun. They send one of yours to the hospital. You send one of theirs to the morgue. The guy from
Yeah, I
Sean
love it. Yeah.
Connery from Untouchables there. Um, and recently Doug Ford's talking about castle doctrine. Is this an area of law that you've had some experience in, or is this more from your personal standpoint and background with the military?
Yeah. Well, was used in firearms instructor. So I know firearms, and then I lived through the United Nations missions where we deploy over to Sarajevo, and we're told you're only allowed to shoot back with what's being shot at you. But you can't tell if a 7.62 is a sniper or a single shot. So it was just nonsense to hamstring people, and we had some issues overseas with that. And I've prosecuted some of those cases, and I've defended some cases from police officers uh, and citizens. It's just I'm not giving people legal advice because it's a dangerous area. It depends on your jurisdiction. It depends on. It's interesting. Some police officers have all the power. They
Mm,
won't charge you,
hmm.
right? If you're defending your home, because it's a split-second decision. Who knows what's happening in a section?
Hmm.
Like when an officer gets charged for shooting somebody who's got a knife and they're 8 feet away, right?
Hmm.
No jury knows how fast somebody can come at them with a knife. So you have to be very, very careful. But when your life is on the line, as long as you're not, dumping 8 rounds in somebody who's on the ground, like you have to make the call that preserves life. But there's so little understanding. There's a case where somebody, emptied 10 rounds at somebody, and they
Hmm.
tried to put him as a racist and a freak, but it was the young officer's first time discharging his weapon in a live fire situation. And so
Sure.
we pulled the records of training, and the police force, all they ever did was like static, you know, 25 rounds every 3 months into a paper target.
Mm,
That's very different taxation on the nervous system than getting in a live fire situation with somebody who's got a gun or a knife. And what
hmm.
happens is the brain just collapses because you haven't rehearsed in a realistic way and pulled the trigger 8 times. Not because he just didn't know it. And I had another case where they pressed the trigger 15 times on safe, a trained
Mm.
police officer. Like, it's really unusual if you don't train realistically. You know this, and I'm not telling you anything new, but the nuances of those trials have to be navigated through creating the right story to allow the trier fact to understand what the person was experiencing in their home. And for in Canada, it's gone ludicrous what they'll charge people for. In the States, you can go too far. Like, an
Hmm.
Uber driver comes on the property and gets lit up by a semi-automatic. Like, that
Right.
person has no defense. So there's a common sense to it, but I don't know. I think people are paralyzed to do anything these days.
I think so, and I think the police, by and large, are more likely to lay charges and let the courts figure it out than they are to put their butt on the line and make the judgment call not to, for whatever liability that might be associated with it.
Well, you saw it. It's horrible what's infected the police forces. It'd be very hard to be a police officer today because our organizations like the military, the police, and government, you get promoted for obedience and compliance, right? Like the way you move up the ranks is you do what the top person says, which is make your political masters happy.
Mm-hmm.
And like we had that the hockey player case in Ontario where I know the police officer who investigated that. He did a great job of investigating this assault case and didn't charge. And then 3 years later, it gets in the paper, a lawyer is sued for money, and all of a sudden the police chief is apologizing for the police chief, every cell in my body, I know, he knows it. I'm talking to you if you're listening to it. You know it was a good investigation. But, you turtled for political pressure to make people happy because they don't, there's no courage left in leadership, I find. And it's destroying the morale of these forces.
Yeah, I mean, courage has been bred out and it's been systematically promoted out of a lot of our government leadership roles. How now you're in a position and being able to touch within the legal world of bringing that all to light, and you're doing a good job at bringing this up through the podcast and through your work. How do you see that changing? How do you see courage being properly rewarded so that we have a system that encourages it?
My political leanings have changed over the years. I think when I was in the military, I liked to lean a little left because the majority of people were conservative. Like I like being the person who pushes against. Now I'm seen as more conservative, but a lot of it has to do with the politics. You know what I mean? What you reward is what you get, or what you incentivize is what you get in business or in politics. And when it comes to militaries, you just compare the Biden administration to the Trudeau administration, and you see who they promoted in the militaries, and they absolutely decimated the militaries because they were trying to use the military. One, I think, especially Trudeau, he wanted to attack anything that represented masculinity. And the most masculine department in any government is the military, like it or not. That's what it is. And so his staff and his people wanted to show them that we could control you, right? And so that resulted in a fundamental change over 8 years of leadership that destroyed our military. Like I think we have very low capacity at the moment. But if you get kind of a regime or political change that incentivizes something else, you can bring it back. But generally, culture comes from the top, right? A CEO or a founder can create a culture. A president with courage, he or she can create a culture. And you need to kind of affect political change, I think, to get it at the level that we're talking about at the nation state level. In your company, it's you as the founder that creates the culture. So fire your HR people, step up and lead your company.
Yeah, 100%. Well, from a political level, you're going to have people who have the cojones to actually vote somebody in who's going to make that change and have the courage to be able to be brave, to push things forward.
It's so hard. Trump is very unique in that his ability to connect with people and play, like that guy appears, many people say he doesn't appear that intellectual, but he's actually brilliant from a messaging perspective in terms of being able to elicit support in one way. And so he was able to kind of fight off mainstream media that was taking him down. In Canada, our Conservative Party, I know the people who are advising him, nice enough people, a bunch of lawyers, complete boneheads when it comes to strategy. They still, I've talked to them, still to this day say no Conservative Party leader will ever go on Rogan. And I just want to smash his and my head against the wall.
Sure.
How stupid it is but they shouldn't be in charge. But the leader has to have the courage to fire the sycophants who encircle him or her and go with their gut. Like I think Pierre Poilievre knew kind of what to do, but was just surrounded by people who are risk adverse.
Yeah, you're playing by the other side's rules at that point, as opposed to making your own.
If you're going to be hated, be hated. You know what I mean? But be hated for the right reason. Double down. I'm going to go on to Joe Rogan because I want to have a great conversation. Right? Trump doesn't hate Canada. Trump hates Trudeau's Canada.
Right.
Trump loves Canadians. He loves the strong Canadians. We've kicked ass. Like if I was PRB, we kicked ass in all the world wars. We kicked your ass in 1812, by the way. We kicked your ass in hockey. right?
Yeah.
Trump likes strength. I will represent Canada being strong. Canada
Mm-hmm.
should be strong. Like that would have just gone all across the nation
Mm-hmm.
of Canada and would have got support for him. Instead, he turtled, and tried to play the liberal game by going on CBC. It's not going to work.
So if you're gonna play the strategy game at the micro level as opposed to at the macro level, if you're
Mhm.
gonna start telling stories within a business and building brand, that's something that you do with Third Eye Insights.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
It's kind of an extension of what we're talking about. I think you intuitively get it, but it's you don't use the big agencies. The big agencies are doing, what the big law firms are doing. They're making money off of your anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like there's so much decentralization of power that you want to operate like a guerrilla unit. And what social media does is allow you to build a community at low cost if you have the courage to say something interesting, to be authentic to your community, right? So I've helped some smaller politicians. It's hard when you have a national party because they don't allow them to do anything.
Mm.
But you just post every day. Like you can kind of geo-target to communities. So you identify in your riding where you need to win that middle, and then you just post every day on issues that resonate with the person in their house who will see it on Instagram every day. Or Facebook is an amazing platform to communicate with people through dynamic posts and authentic posts. So, a small player can take down a huge player by using guerrilla tactics in the digital room. But most of the agencies don't do it because they make money doing things the old way. They want you to spend a fortune on Google SEO, which is useless today, right?
Is it really?
Oh,
Google SEO?
no, Google. Most of the searches are happening on TikTok and Instagram.
That's true. And AI is kind of killing the whole Google. I mean, people
Well,
would
nobody
say you
wants
want
to
to,
see 3 pages of ads to find something at the end. Like it's
right.
just, but it's a model that's worked for 25 years. So you go to a big agency and they spend 50 grand a month. Whereas if you put that 50 grand a month on doing amazing content, reaching out, like you would just kill your competition.
Mm-hmm.
But your content has to be creative too, right? Like, so that's the problem too. Most people get on social media and just do what everybody else is doing. Like LinkedIn is the worst place in the world to hear people humble bragging about, I got nominated by a bunch of, lawyers who don't stick their neck out for being somebody else who doesn't stick my neck out. Like, who cares? Right?
What about
That's why I get a
TikTok?
lot of business, because I say things
Yeah.
that people don't want to say, and lawyers don't say anything interesting.
Your TikTok account. So you're the rogue lawyer.
Yeah.
That's your brand and account on social media. What platform are you finding the most effective? TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube?
I think I can share with you because we're fairly good in this area, and I think your community might like it. And Camille has a social media masterclass that goes out on this. But Instagram is me, right? So when you're on Instagram, you're showing what you do. Here's what I'm eating. Here's what I'm doing, right? LinkedIn is us. This is my community. Facebook is we.
Yep.
Right? And TikTok is you. So TikTok, most people go on for entertainment. So if you're making TikTok content, you want to make it to be entertaining for other people. If you're making Instagram content, you want to make it so your potential clients can get to know you before they hire you. So the consult happens for your business or your profession before they meet you. They look you at Instagram and they say, this guy went there. I love Yellowstone. Or this guy, went hiking. I love, so they get to know you. Facebook, you build communities and groups. It's where you share pictures of your family and your friends and things you do. And Facebook has probably got the most value for dollar spend right now. Facebook really connects with people who connect. And as I said, LinkedIn is where if you want to connect with business B2B or businesses or elevate your role amongst your peers, then you can kind of put articles in and do that. So that's the strategy. Facebook produces the most results, dollar for dollar, if you make good content. Instagram is kind of the most addictive to look at who's liking you. YouTube pays the best. But YouTube is the hardest to build. So YouTube actually pays its creators the most, but you really got to invest 2 years of hardcore work where you can get a viral video on TikTok or Instagram and do well. But like if you have creators who want to get in, YouTube is the place, I think, to connect the best. So you have a different strategy for all of them, but you can use the same content repurposed a little bit, if you're making content. That's what I'd say.
So, back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier, if without giving legal advice, what would, if somebody breaks into your house 2:00 in the morning?
Mm-hmm.
What's the sort of framework that people should have in their mind?
Well, know your jurisdiction, first of all. Right? If you're in Texas, it's different than if you're in Quebec. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to understand that where you choose to live is where you choose the rules that you have to live by. Right? And in some places it's a little safer than others. And that comes with different things. So, personally, if somebody breaks into my house, like you want to have the opportunity to figure out, is it like the neighbors' kids who think you're away on vacation and are looking for booze?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or is it a home invasion because they want to come in and take your Rolexes and they don't care if they kill you in the process?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Our jurisdiction isn't as friendly towards if you make a mistake and shoot two 14-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like you're going to have a really tough trial, especially if they don't have weapons. Right? And that's the problem is some people become extra skittish too. And some people live for an opportunity to shoot an intruder. In their head, they're just always fantasizing about being legally able to do it. And
Sure.
that can get sussed out, right? It's why you really have to have a strong ground. But that one case I think I talked about a while ago where a guy came in with a weapon and was breaking in and wouldn't leave and was walking towards them. Well, I'm just going to put two in the chest and one in the head. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to, but it's a split-second decision, and we know it's better to at least have a chance to win, in front of a jury than have a funeral. So
Mm-hmm.
the thing I always say is, don't try to subscribe to an ideology that just says this is always the best or this is always the best, right? You have to be an intelligent, smart human who can assess threats, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just not like you're like, oh, somebody broke in, it's dark, I can just pop them, right?
Mm-hmm.
In some jurisdictions, you're going to go down. Even though really maybe you had a legitimate reason to do it, you're going to go down. So you don't want to leave your family alone, as opposed to, go into your room, make sure your family's there and lock the door. And if somebody comes in, then take them. But like if you get your gun and walk through the house looking for them and they're crawling out your window, you don't want to put a round in their back and then claim that you were terrified. So I said this phrase, I got in shit for it, but I stand by it. Like, nuance is the new N-word. And I don't say that racially at all. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, society you're not allowed to have nuance, right? Everybody just wants to say it's this or that, but every situation has nuance. The answers are often in the gray areas in a fact-specific scenario where, I can't give somebody one recipe that works all the time. Right. And that's where I think sometimes in the self-defense community, they're so busy saying, if this happens, I will do this. That works in some states. Right. And that affects, but those states have decided to have those rules. Sure. If you live in a state that doesn't have it, there's no sense sacrificing yourself in the altar of justice because you think you're right about something that your jurisdiction doesn't support.
It reminds me of the that old poem. What was it? His way was right, his will was strong. He's just as dead as if he was wrong. And I think it was the stoplight or the crossing walk. Hey, they got a red. I can walk. Here we go. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. You're in the right, but you're dead. Right?
What was that poem from? I like that. It's a good call.
You know what? I don't know. So I'll pull it up after this and I'll
find
the
notes. Yeah, because that's a cool poem. I'm going to use that in a jury trial one day and attribute it to you.
Thank you. Well, attribute it to the author of the poem. It's like Michael Scott's quote, you miss 100% of the shots you never take. Michael Scott, underneath it, Wayne Gretzky. Yeah. So you could do that, no problem. You could put Travis Bader underneath it. Sure.
You know what quote I like I think your audience gets it because there's so many fake tough guys out there these days, but it comes from, I think it's Julius Caesar, Shakespeare's play, but he goes, how brave upon your chin you wear the beard of Hercules, but when inward searched have a liver white as milk.
Oh, I like it.
Right?
Like yeah, it's so true.
Like you're wearing this, but when push comes to shove, you really won't stand up for your morals. But then I don't want people to take that to mean, go too far to be right. But I like these things these days.
Most people don't get tested though.
No,
Those people
sure.
don't have that level of being able to be tested and
Mhm.
seeing where they would actually stand.
So
And
true.
and unfortunately, a lot of times the testing stage is a bit of a foreign environment. It seems now, where you can get tested on the playground and stand up and fight. Okay, we know where you're at. Getting tested in the public eye for cancel culture, all the rest going through. COVID was a good place for checking kind of where people stand when they're being pushed. And some people, I saw three people. I saw the people who capitulated. I saw the people who vociferously stood up and fought against it, and then I saw the people who just did their own thing quietly, and they made it work for themselves and for their families, which was kind of interesting.
I've tried to help some people. Like I get calls so often from people on the who suffered on the vaccine side, and again, it comes down to human psychology. It's everything is actually more complicated, although first principles matter.
Mm,
We get directed in a way, because there was a lot of really good service members who lost their careers because of a vaccine stance, and the military knew it was an illegal order. We know that to
mm,
kick people out. They did it anyhow because they were told to do it. It's a travesty. But the vigor in which some people said I won't get a vaccine, I understand that, and they said it was spiritual. But back in the days of Somalia and Rwanda, when we had those missions,
mm.
the people from the exact same communities, when they were told they can go over there and they're going to be able to blow up shit and they
Yep.
said all you got to do is get a vaccine, they sprinted with a
Yeah.
rucksack to the vaccine line.
Get up to the needle parade and go on through.
Oh, but you know what I mean? But it's because it was a different frame of mind. And what can happen to us as we kind of polarize is things tend to matter more. And I'm not saying it's that's just about the vaccines, but people can really kind of hurt their overall success trying to be right on discrete issues,
Mm-hmm.
right? Rather than saying, like I helped James Top, the guy who walked across Canada.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you're familiar with that cool service guy who's a warrant officer who criticized the government's policy and they court-martialed him, but he walked across Canada. That's the scene where Pierre Poilievre walked with him into Ottawa.
Oh, nice.
He's
Nice.
actually
Yeah.
the guy I think that's responsible for ending the vaccine mandates in Canada. That walk across
Really?
Canada, 2 weeks later, they ended them. It wasn't really the trucker convoy. He walked across quietly, but then the military, at the direction of the Liberal government, decided they were still going to punish him, and so they court-martialed him for disobeying a lawful order. And I represented him to try and help him, and he was one of the most skilled, like sniper, recce, just a really cool service guy.
Yeah.
But he put on his uniform and went to a protest and criticized the government. And it's very hard to win that case. You're just not allowed to do it in uniform, right? And he lost everything.
Yeah, and that's rather disheartening. And the politics behind our laws are rather disheartening. But you've been known to go up against the big machine, against the man,
Yeah.
and there. I mean, I remember years ago when I started the Silvercore Club. Originally, I started this club based on a conversation I had with a firearms officer. Firearms office program says, okay, if you want to get an authorization to transport your restricted firearms, you're going to have to belong to a gun club or a range. And I read through the Firearms Act and the regulations, and I said, you know what? I don't think you guys have the legal authority to do this. It's not in legislation. It's not in regulation. You're creating policy, and you're enacting it as if it's got some sort of legal weight behind it. And the firearms officer calls me up, and because we're going back and forth for a while, he says, Travis, hold on a second. You're right. I agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
But we're the federal government. We'll hang it up in the courts for years. You're never going to win. He says, why don't you just start a club? I said, well, I don't have a range. He says, I didn't say range. I said, start a club. I'm like, oh, okay, interesting. So I took all the money that I'd put towards lawyers at this point to fight this, because I told them I'm taking it to court. We're going to have a legal challenge, right? And I then put that all towards putting a club together and ran it at a loss for many, many years. It's a nonprofit, but I did it specifically to provide a path forward for people that were being railroaded. Firearms program loves it because people are now complying. So there's a way forward to win this. But the idea of fighting it within the constraints of, let's say, the courtroom, and not to tangent too far, but another one that was just eye-opening to me was a a reference hearing on I think it was a Type 97A firearm, and ease of conversion. And I was called in to opine on the ease of conversion. And so I'm subject matter expert for for one side, and it was easy to convert. And so as a subject matter for the court, not for one side, I say, yeah, it's easy to convert. I mean, I'm supposed to provide the best information for the court. Get up, give my 2 bits, and then I sit down and I see the Crown expert, who's a very well-known name, and in my opinion, what's the polite term I learned from lawyers? Grossly misrepresented the truth. When he didn't need to. Had he heard what I said, I mean, it would be easy for him. Anyways, he went in there, and I'm watching this, I'm like, holy crap, how can this person lie to such an extent? And the court actually buy it. It's absolutely easy to see through. And when all was said and done, it really didn't matter what he said. Mm-hmm. It didn't matter that he lied or what he went through. All that really mattered was the proper protocol followed when they were making the decision to prohibit this one firearm. So really, that reference here in from my experience was neither here nor there. That you could make all of the right decisions in making a final decision and make that final decision completely wrong, and it would still, that wrong decision would stand. So going up against a man is a stacked deck. How do you deal with that?
Interesting. You know, it's a different version of asymmetric warfare. Like, you know, you don't fight, you know, a land battle in Russia with you know what I mean? Like you have to pick your battleground, right? And when you don't go into a resource war with somebody. But for example, I'm representing Lieutenant General Whalen, you know, the 3rd highest ranking general who got submarined by the Liberal government. That was the case, but you know, I subpoenaed the Chief of Defense Staff, the Liberal government, Trudeau himself. You know what I mean? Like, so they dropped the charges in the end. But you know, that he was the one general who had the courage to kind of really take them on. And we got a book that's going to be coming out as well called Betrayed. That's going to be spectacular, exposing what really goes on up there. Because most generals write books just fucking telling them about their career and how amazing they are, and they make me want to stick a fork in my eye. Like, I want a general to say something interesting, a Canadian general at least. But you know, subpoenaing people who didn't want to be on the stand and tell the truth because they would be lying. That was kind of a tactical move that helped us win that case, because they would not allow themselves to be exposed. And so they just thought, they kept trying to give better deals, but they were dealing with a man of principle who wouldn't take their fucking deal. And then in the end they caved. But it's you know, a lot of it is kind of poker too, right? Like it's but there's risks, because sometimes you can have the best hand and you got a 2 out of 3 chance of winning and you don't win. Like, it's terrifying.
Yeah, and the statistic I've heard, you go in a 100% case. You're 100%, you got everything in your favor, and you got a 70% chance of winning.
Yeah, it's not right. But I think it can also be self-interested, as long as you're not doing it for the purpose of your own promotion. Like, you know, it also can help you. I tell people all the time, take on a tough case or take on a tough issue. Just be honest and authentic about it. Like, don't be mean, don't lie. Like, some people are just shitty people who take on cases. But if you believe that there is an injustice or something that needs to be done in your industry that's unpopular, like, be the agent of change by daring to step up. And I think generally over a lifetime you succeed if you do that. And then don't be scared to pull at strings that are dangling over there. But it's hard if you don't have the resources.
Well, something I've kind of learned, and I learned at an earlier age, is, you know, most people that come up with all the excuses. I can't do it because look at what I have to lose. I can't do it because I don't have enough money. Or I can't do it because, and it's surprising how much an individual can actually affect positive change if they're willing to stand up. And if they think about it a little bit. Like, if you want to play the game by the opposition's rules, it'll be just like the firearms officer said to me. We're the federal government. We'll hang it up in court for years. You're never going to win, right? But if you change the conversation, one thing that I've seen work effectively well is media.
Yeah.
being able to, and the way that media works now with us being able to self-broadcast through social media, there is a narrative that the opposition might not want to tackle. Like I
Mhm.
remember one case with a corrupt police officer, and it wasn't until I threatened to get the media involved that he actually ended up facing charges. And he'd been under investigation for some time. And I looked at all my legal resources, and I've ended up using that exact same process and friends in the media to be able to push what should be done and what should be right forward.
It's so true because it's exhausting and it's intimidating, but sometimes you don't know how close you are to victory because
Mm.
the the institutional power players always act like they're winning, even when
Oh
they're
yeah.
losing.
Oh yeah.
Even up until a day, they'll always look at you. Have you lost your mind? You're never going to win this. Even though in the back, they're seconds away. I love that. There's another quote. I don't remember who said it. Like on the plains of battle lie the blackened bones of countless thousands who on the verge of victory sat down to rest and resting died. Like
Mm.
just keep pushing until you can't go anymore. Like but don't do it stupidly. That's what I want to get across to people. Like with the truckers convoy, I was telling you, with the truckers convoy, I was desperately trying to get access to some of them to help them because what I would have said, we could have totally destroyed the government if they just parked their cars off-site and 3 times a day drove through the downtown very slow, making noise. But then in the
Mm.
end, took their track, and then all of them came in person and sat on Parliament Hill and called for Trudeau to come and talk to them.
Mm.
Like you would have won that debate because he was a
Mm.
coward. He wouldn't come out and talk to them. But
Mm.
when you strategically and tactically, when you park tractor trailers in the whole downtown, it changes the dynamic, even though they were amazing humans who were doing great
Mm.
things. Strategically, they didn't know how to take on the big guy. They thought just good intentions would win, or
Mm.
being good people. It's not the case. Like you need to get people in who can think at that level.
Mm.
But asymmetric warfare is the only way to kind of win when there's a power imbalance.
And that's something that you do well. That's have you seen many other lawyers or law firms do that?
I've come across big law firms who will do it, but almost in a criminal way. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Like where they'll actually power corrupts. And the
Sure.
big firms who work for big government agencies and whatever, like they'll
Yeah.
do it, but it's more like at the lower end, or like you just don't see it that often. Right?
Mm.
You don't see it that often, especially in making change. But I've met a lot of lawyers who genuinely care and do whatever they can. But
Mm.
you also need to get training beyond law. Like I have strategic operations training, like all of this crazy training that put on top of law allows you to do it. So if you don't have that expertise, hire a consultant. Like if
Mm.
you're a lawyer who's taken on a case that matters a lot to you and you're going against a power player, get somebody strategic on your team who can see things from a different perspective, who can identify those players. So I'll get hired from time to time on cases to come on, not necessarily for the legal element, but for the strategic element or how to speak to a jury. But lawyers are arrogant, like a lot of professionals, in that they think they know everything and they don't
Mm.
want to share glory. They don't want to share their identity is tied to winning because of them alone, which is the
Right.
antithesis of special ops or proper team planning. Like
Yeah.
you need an
100%.
EOD guy. If you've got a bridge operation, you need a sniper. But lawyers don't do that, and a lot of organizations don't do it. They want to just succeed with their own community and their own bubble, and you
Yep.
need to reach out.
Interesting one that you've probably seen before. There's a YouTube video called "Never Talk to the Police." Have you seen that
Shut the
video?
fuck up, the shut the fuck up guys.
Yeah. I don't know it's a really fast talker giving a presentation. He says, look, I'm going to give equal time. So I want to talk fast to get my point out. And he's going to go up and talk. And I think he had a police officer come
Yeah.
in and somebody of some importance or rank. This is a US older video. It's up on
Hmm.
YouTube. Have you
Yeah.
seen this one?
I don't know. I may have, but it's not popping into my head.
Okay,
I'll watch
so
it for sure.
he goes up and he gives all these reasons why you should never talk to the police, even the most best intention. You're completely innocent and how it can go sideways and all these
Yeah.
different examples. And then he stops talking and the police officer comes up for his rebuttal. And the police officer says, I can't disagree with anything you say here, right?
Yeah.
Have you encountered situations, because I've got a little bit different idea on that whole never talk to the police. And my never talk to the police based on experience, personal experience, as well as the consulting I've done, is maybe it's okay to strategically talk to the police, like ask questions. Why are you doing this? Do you think this is unlawful? And start cementing, like if you're in a position, if you're in an interrogation room and it's under video, if a body cam is being worn, if there's, maybe this is not a bad time for you to use the opportunity to cement their position and create information and something for your defense to be able to use in the future.
So you kind of have different orders of thinking, right? Like if you're absolutely right. Especially that's why I want body cams on every officer, like to protect the officer and to protect the citizen. Like to me, it's criminal that we don't have body cams. I think it protects good officers. I think it protects the citizen. When officers come and ask me for help, I've had officers who know this. I tell them not to speak, and they still get tricked into speaking to the police. Because when you're in that interrogation room and the stressors come up, and you just, like, I've had officers talk and blow a case where where they were actually innocent. So it's easier said than done. Just on your point on the video, there's these Las Vegas lawyers who are now the top lawyers in Vegas, and they use social media, and all they did was do little TikTok videos saying, when the police come and talk to you, shut the fuck up. And they just have like go-to. It's just like, police come and do that, shut the fuck up. Like, and it was simple, but it was such a powerful message.
Yeah.
And they get hired. So business owners can use social media for that. But you have to be careful because some people think they're smarter than they are. Some people are smart enough, right? And it depends on the police officer you're talking to as well. So you got to know your opponent. There are hammerhead officers who don't know what they're doing and can easily kind of be trapped into looking stupid or overextending the rights. And now you've got it on a video and it'll work for you. You know, if a detective comes up who's, knows the read technique and has done, you could try and play that game and you don't know what they don't know whenever you're talking to them. So it can work if it's a beat cop coming up who doesn't understand firearms law, that'll work. But if they're investigating a weapon smuggling thing and inadvertently stuff has come through your property, you don't know about it, you know what I mean? Like, it's always context-based, right? So definitely when it comes to, we see those videos on YouTube, like when they're pulled over. But, in Canada now, you have to produce your license and registration and identity, and you have to blow. You don't even have to have any indication. So you need to know your jurisdictional rules, and you can ask questions. I think sometimes it can make people get into more trouble by going against them. The only videos we see online of it working are the ones that worked.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You know what I mean? We don't see how many people get shit kicked. You know what I mean? And beat up, or something else happens, and you get like 10 extra charges, which cost you $50,000, which doesn't equal the revenue you're going to get from 10,000 views. You know what I mean? Like, so, be careful. But the firearms community, I'm with you. Most of the officers don't know the laws, especially in Canada, on storage, use, and all that, and they lay charges that are nonsense. And so I think if you show that you're informed, ask them questions, you can avoid a charge in those cases.
Yeah, I think with the firearms side, what we tell people is go above and beyond. Yeah, I know where the bare minimum is. We'll teach what the bare minimum is so you know where that threshold is if you're on one side or the other.
Yeah.
But go above and beyond so that a trier of fact can look at that and say, clearly they went above and beyond, right? And
you're not going to convince a hammerhead you're right anywhere in the world. Anywhere in the world. Not a DMV desk, not anywhere, right? So sometimes you have to kind of pick your fights.
Yeah.
Just avoid getting in shit is the best way to.
Yeah. And how do you avoid that? What is one of our instructors? He says, CYA, can you articulate? Right. So if you can articulate it, excellent. If you can't, if you're like, well, technically I'm allowed to. Well, technically they can also charge you, and you can have to.
Yeah, your listeners are blessed because they have a higher level of information, and for the kind of less sophisticated officer, most of them are just worried about how much work this is going to be.
Yeah.
Like how much paperwork am I going to be? Am I going to be embarrassed? So you can affect you can pluck the playing field with that.
Yeah, that's a good point. With Third Eye, how long have you been doing that? And what are your preferred kind of clients? Who are the people that would really benefit from seeing you?
Yeah. I love that business. I kind of started about 6 or 7 years ago. My current wife was actually asked to be an intern at the law firm. She wanted to be a lawyer, and she's a bit of a savant. It's Camille Moore, but like she's well known across the internet. And she just came in and rebranded my logo and told me to get on Facebook. And then I was talking to her and I said, this aligns with a lot of the PSYOP and information warfare stuff. And I told her,
Mm.
don't go to law school. Lawyers suck. I said, I'll bankroll a branding and marketing company because I've always loved that business element because there's real strategy
Mm-hmm.
that business owner. A lot of founders don't get the right advice. They're forces of nature in terms of their ability to create something, but you get to a ceiling and you can't get past the ceiling because what got you there is not what you need to get through the ceiling, and you don't have
Mm.
good advisors. And I love working with those people who create things and then say, hey, well, this is what we got to do. A few of these things, a little bit of accountability, that brings the most joy, and it's not fighting asshole lawyers. Like that's what I want to do more of, is help founders
Mm.
go from 2 million to 50 million. And they
Mm.
can do it, but if you don't get the right advisors, you're just going to kind of stay being exhausted because there's only so much you can do with in your area. So working with founders, we've turned down projects with big corporations because they're just woke,
Mm.
right? They think they want you, but you can't get anything done. So
Right.
we work with a lot of southern and western United States brands that are cool,
Yeah.
that do kind of robust Yellowstone type stuff, and that's what I enjoy doing. If I could work with more founders who have the right parts, like that's my joy to bring them to like, because too often the shitty people get ahead because they break the rules. Even if you look in
Yeah.
law, just in law, like law is so, those billboards you see, the Morgan and Morgan or
Sure.
the
Yeah.
the other ones, like those guys are not doing any trials. They're just marketing and pretending, right? And there's so many
Sure.
lawyers who care, but they don't want to do that. Like there's tons of founders who care about their customer, who do returns, who go above and beyond, and they're not going to lie to get ahead, but they don't have to. They just have to kind of learn how to use marketing and branding strategies, and they can beat the competition without having to compromise their character.
Just even in my small industry here, I look at there's some businesses out there that just will try and hack SEO. They'll lie. They got fake locations up. They'll piggyback off of other people's geolocations by trying to advertise themselves. And I
Yeah.
think after a while that becomes evident to some. Maybe it works in some ways. Typically, you'd think Google would pick this stuff up, but there's some real hacks out there. Most of them don't want to go down that route because they got enough self-respect to not lie, cheat, and steal to try and get themselves ahead. For those people, what are the most common mistakes that you see when you come in with Third Eye, people making?
they're just they're believing what so-called experts say is true, but the experts are just perpetuating what they make money off of, right?
Mm.
It's the same as in law, like they just, if somebody specializes in root canals as a dentist, all studies show they're gonna suggest way more root canals that aren't
Sure.
necessary, right? So problem is the founder's so busy, they're trying to figure out what's happening. They think, okay, if I just pay for the best known agency or lawyer in town, I'll get the best service. It's not always the case. So
Mm.
get to know the people, ask them the right questions. And in today's world, you don't have to hire locally. You can hire nationally and get the strategies, from people who are the best. But do your research. It's not a billboard. It's not a fake claim, but no, that's what
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah, I remember looking for a marketing company, and a friend of mine who's in marketing, and she says, "Look, I've done research. I've shortlisted some companies for you. Here you go." And I start going through these different companies, and there's one, and it's a high dollar value one. I'm like, "There's no way I'm putting them. I'm putting them aside." And I worked my way through all these different companies, and where I thought I would save money with these cheaper companies was within the first minute of the conversation with the owner of this higher value company, Origin Outside. Now,
Yeah.
Origin, um, first minute of the conversation with the owner, I'm like, okay, she gets it. She knows where it's at. I don't know how I'm going to afford this, but we're going to have to go with them. But there's a very human factor of caring and truly wanting to understand where you're at now and how to get you forward. The other ones, although, yeah, they're cheaper, um, they were just boilerplate.
In the marketing world, the problem is you got two types of marketers and marketing agencies. The kind of community college educated people that are essentially graphic designers. So
Sure.
they'll do a lot of activity, but no impact.
Mm,
The big agencies, the people who are in marketing, they went to MBAs.
mm,
But to get into business school, you need to know calculus. And
right.
9 times out of 10, people who are good at calculus are not creative.
Right.
And so the people out of MBAs who get into marketing are the ones who can't get into finance because finance pays more. So what you end
Right.
up getting in marketing agencies are MBAs who aren't creative but weren't the top MBAs, right?
Yeah.
So what you need to find is, but they're built like law firms. They're built on billable hours. They're built on you just accepting I know more and doing what I tell you, right? And what you need is strategy. So I would ask strategic questions.
Okay.
What would how would you take a company like this to allow them to scale here, working within these confines? Like, see if, and then ask them to come back and say, give me 3 samples of what you might do. I don't know. Like, there's ways to hire good people, but in the marketing world, you don't have. This is why I love it, because it's not populated with the highest intellect people who think strategically. So it's easy to dominate because it doesn't attract those people. And you always want to be the top dog in your industry. You don't want to go compete against geniuses.
Yeah.
Like that's the angle.
Well, what's the future? What's the future of Millar Law and Third Eye Insights, and what's the future for you? What's on the docket?
It's not politics, because there's no way, unless everything breaks down and we need to do something. But I'd love to help. I'd love to help some more. I'm helping a few political people, but I'd love to help build a coalition in Canada of critical thinkers who can come up with ideas that can help the country. I can't get people to debate me, you know what I mean, on topics. No liberals want to debate, thinkers. The law firm is good. I'm trying to it's hard to find good lawyers who are this passionate and who want to work in kind of a special ops type environment. Most of them want to have a corner office, be considered brilliant, and not care. So I'm looking for lawyers who give a shit, want to work hard, and have meaning. It's just really hard to find that in the legal industry. Because I want to hand off some of my great cases to a new generation of people who haven't been exhausted in as many battles. I still take, some big cases every year and fight them, but I'm a sucker for saying yes when I'm busy. But coaching, I get equity in some of these good businesses for helping them through. Like, that brings me the most joy. But in the end, money is one thing, but you want to make a difference, because I'm worried about our society. Like, I'm worried about what's happening with our youth and where we're going. And I think people think it won't crumble, and they haven't seen the destruction that can exist in the universe if you lose your societal values. And I'm worried about where we're going. So I'm looking for ways to try and help out.
Well, I'm looking to see what we can do to help promote that through the podcast and through the newsletter here. We've also got the Silvercore Club private members podcast. It's the Outpost. We'll do a quick record on that one with some rapid fire questions for you. We're going to have links in the description. We're going to have links over to your social media so they can see some of the rogue lawyer clips, which have gone viral, which is pretty cool. And some of the work you've done. Anything else we should be chatting about before we to wrap this one?
No, dude, I'm happy the universe brought us into contact. I'm going to check out your what you do and see if I can support you as well.
Well, I got an interesting story for you afterwards too, which at some point will be shared on the Silvercore podcast, but it hasn't happened yet. Some people might know what I'm talking about. But Phillip, thank you very much for being on the podcast. Really enjoyed this.
Cool.